Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. Today we have a book club discussion and we're talking about Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati. First of all, this video may contain spoilers. I can usually keep the spoilers kind of vague, but just be aware. You're welcome to keep watching anyway if you want to, but now you have been warned. So in this story we follow Clytemnestra, who is a woman in Greek mythology. We follow her as she grows up in Sparta, as she's training to be a warrior. We follow her through her relationships with her parents and her sisters. As she grows up, she has children and she has 3 different romantic kind of relationships, I guess you would call them. 3 men in her life. We follow her in these different roles as a woman, a wife, a mother, a princess, a queen, through all of the struggles that she's put through and how she handles that and herself and all of her relationships, and how she eventually plots her revenge. What made me gravitate toward this book was that it is a mythological retelling from a female perspective. I always enjoy a female perspective and a strong female character, and in this case it's a woman who is a mother who has her children taken away from her and she wants revenge, and so that to me sounded very intriguing, and that's why I wanted to read this book. Next I have a few questions that I'm gonna group together, I think. The first ones are from Mimi at It's Mimi Duong. Are you someone who knew about her character or story before going into the book? And do you think knowing the story would have changed your like of the book? Personally, I did read up on the story of Clytemnestra because of how I like to read Greek retellings. And then the next question is from Chelsea at Libraries and Lattes, and she asks, having recently read The Song of Achilles, did that affect your reading experience or understanding of Clytemnestra in any way? I definitely picked up on the similarities in plot and characters, but found it interesting to read about the Trojan War from a different perspective. I didn't read anything about Clytemnestra before reading this book. I do have a little bit of understanding about Greek mythology in general, and some of the names are familiar to me. Clytemnestra is also mentioned in The Song of Achilles, and so knowing that I was going to read this book next, I did pick up on her name being mentioned, and so I realized that event that took place in The Song of Achilles was going to be a big part of this book as well. But that's basically all the knowledge I had beforehand. And I also don't think that affected my experience of reading the book very much, because I kind of forgot. I only remember that like right before that was about to happen, and like when she was sent away to that, and like when they mentioned that there was no wind and things, then I was like, oh, that's gonna happen now. There were so many other things that happened before that, so I forgot. Which was good, because then I still got that sense of like gasp moment, which I always enjoy reading a book. I do think it was helpful to know a little bit more about the Trojan War, and just having read The Song of Achilles right before this. It's basically just a framework for all of these other events, and like knowing it was going to go on for 10 years, I wasn't like expecting them to come back any second. Just like reading a historical novel set during the Second World War or any other war, I think that's how I read this story. Like there's a war going on and the men are away fighting that war, and like what happens to the women. And obviously the war is important because it shapes how people act and what events can happen, but it's not like the main plot, it's just a factor. I also think that the characters are mostly consistent, like between these different books that I've read, but they can still be like perceived a little bit differently by different people. Like Odysseus, for example, he always appears somehow, but he plays a different role in everybody's individual stories. So there are things about him that are consistent, and then also things that shift based on what effect he has on people's lives and their story. But that's one aspect of these mythological retellings that I really enjoy, is that I don't have to get to know every single character in every book. I get a more complete picture of who they are from all of these different perspectives. In terms of Greek retellings, what do you think makes a retelling good? I think that's a really good and interesting question, and now that I have read a few, I'm getting more of a grasp on what I actually want from the retelling and what I enjoy. I wanted to stay pretty true to the original myth because I want them to sort of fit together in this big puzzle that Greek mythology is, and then like from these different focal points I still want everything to fit. I don't want to be confused by different versions and like different takes on stories. I want the facts of the myth to stay the same, and then I just want it to be fleshed out with that individual's like thoughts and feelings. Like those things can vary and like change, but like I think that I want the main events to be as true to the original myth as possible. I also want it to be dramatic, like the more dramatic the better. Because I feel like in myth, just like in fantasy or whatever, like anything can happen, and so I want anything to happen. The crazier the better. You know, that's the fun part. There can be magic and there can be gods and they can be irrational. Like come up with these like weird solutions and punishments for each other, and it just makes for an interesting story that would be horrible to read if it was set in the real world, but like in a myth it's all fun and games, so like that makes it more entertaining. And then I also want the relatability in terms of like human emotions. In this case, there aren't any gods as characters that are active in the story. They do play a part in that some people believe in them, like in a religious way, and pray to them and sacrifice to them, but they're not like showing up as characters in this story. And Clytemnestra herself doesn't believe in these gods. I can understand that choice being made because it makes the events and her children being sacrificed and things like that become so much more horrible, because it's not just an element in this fantastical story, it's an actual human woman whose children are murdered. It's like having a troll under the bridge in a fairy tale, and that troll is eating children, and we're reading that and it's like, oh, this monster is so scary, but it doesn't maybe like hurt us to our core. But if we replace that monster with a regular man who's under the bridge and killing children, now we're in a like true crime documentary kind of mode, and it's all very uncomfortable and scary. And I think that's what happens with this book. It's that the magic of it and like the fairy tale aspect of it is removed, and we're just seeing the events play out in a very human world. That I think was a good choice for this particular story, but it also takes the magic out of the mythological aspect of it all, I think. The next question is from Helen, and she asks, how does Clytemnestra rank among the other Greek myth retellings you've read? I think this is probably the lowest, which is weird. I don't think it's bad, but in terms of enjoyment, it was the least fun. In terms of hardship and female experience and relationships and all of that, I think it's great. But I also would have wanted a more sort of thought through and clever way of getting revenge and like more strategy around that, more agency. I would also have loved to see more gods. So just to compare the ones that I have read, Circe is kind of serious, but also has that magical spark and the gods and all of that, and it's a little bit more ethereal. It still has female empowerment, but it's not as serious, I wouldn't say, as Clytemnestra. And then we have the Song of Achilles, which is a little bit more lighthearted, I would say, or more maybe simplistic and straightforward than Circe is. And then we have Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes, which is just like very fun and entertaining compared to the other two, where there's a lot of perspectives and a lot of creatures and monsters and gods. That's probably my top one because of that, because it was so entertaining. Clytemnestra is very serious and also does not have that magical spark to it. And so that's why I think it's my lowest rating of them. I don't think that it's bad, it's just different, and it's not my top form of entertainment. Mimi asks, did you get confused by all the different characters? Did you feel they were all necessary for the overarching plot? I love that there are a lot of different characters, and yes, I find it confusing. There are these like family trees in the beginning and a list of all of the different characters and their relation to each other. I just think that's part of the fun, and I don't put so much pressure on myself to remember who's who and who has beef with who. I think there could have been maybe a little bit more repetition in this book, just to remind the reader why someone was mad at someone, or like what the issue between certain characters was, because like it's a lot to keep in your head. I feel like I'm just kind of watching it from a distance. It's like watching people fight in a town square or something. Like I don't know everything about it, but I'm just like sitting there with my popcorn and just like, I just like the drama of it all. Mimi also asks, how did you feel about Clytemnestra's revenge? Was it satisfying? I did think it was a bit of a quick fix at the end, and I was expecting the revenge part to play a bigger part in the story. I was expecting there to be more clever strategy and thinking about what she was gonna do, and like maybe using some scheme to lure him into a certain situation, and then, you know, and I was also expecting the punishment to be a little bit more drawn out and humiliating, and like I wanted him to pay more. It just seemed like, oh, he's in the bath, I'll stab him real quick. I think he got off a bit easy, but I also don't think that there's any other kind of punishment that would work on him, because he just doesn't care, he just doesn't have the emotional capability to be humiliated. He just gets angry and then takes that out on someone else. The only way to deal with that is to make sure that he can't ever hurt anybody ever again. But I wouldn't exactly say it was satisfying. I was definitely hoping for more. This book was really marketed as woman empowerment or strong women. What about Clytemnestra as a book showcased this or didn't? I think this book shows a lot of different kinds of girls and women, and I don't think that it passes judgment on which kind is the right kind or the best kind of woman to be. And so in that way, I think it's empowering. There are different kinds of relationships. There are like mother-daughter relationships, sister relationships in different generations, romantic relationships, and there's like infatuations and dreams and agency. Like they have their own goals and their own thoughts about things. And so all of that, I think, is empowering. It would have been very easy to just say that women should be warriors and that's the best kind of woman there is, or that the warrior women are the odd ones, or like they're the different kinds of women compared to the norm. And I didn't get that feeling. I just felt like there's a whole range of different women and that's fine. I also think it showcases a lot of different ways that women struggle, like what kind of abuse they have to take and how strong they are to endure that, even though they shouldn't have to. But somehow they make their way through that and make the best of it. There is, of course, Clytemnestra, who has to deal with a lot of abuse, and there are plenty of examples of women who are just used as pawns in the men's political schemes and like their own plans for their own egos. There's a young couple who has to hide their relationship and their sexuality. There are women being used and abused in their work environment. Like there are so many examples of horrible things happening to women and things that they have to be frightened of and that they have to sort of protect each other from. And I think that that was very well done, just like showing how women understand what other women are going through and like protecting each other and looking out for each other and supporting each other. I think that's always empowering because there's, a lot of power in that. Next question from Chelsea is, how much do you hate Agamemnon? Okay, not 100% serious, but maybe a little bit. So hate is a strong word, and I'm a very grayscale kind of person. I can usually find some kind of quality that is redeeming for a person, or find some kind of explanation for why a person is doing horrible things. Not that it justifies their actions, but I can usually find some kind of compassion for someone. In this case, I can't. It's just all ego and evil. There are no redeeming qualities. There's no backstory to explain his actions. There's nothing to make me want to forgive him or even understand him. I don't think that Agamemnon has any concept of what kindness is, or what empathy is, or like what's right and wrong. Like, he's just this cold shell of a man. I can't find any reason to forgive him. I can't find any explanation to understand him. But I also don't think that me hating him is going to have any effect on him. He's not going to care what I think of him. And so the only consequence of that is going to be filling me up with anger and hate. And it's just going to run right off him. And he's not going to be affected by that at all. He is a waste of my emotion. And I'm not going to spend my time hating him. But if I had to pick a percentage, like 100%. And then the final question is from Helen. She asks, your favorite character and the one question you would like to ask them. I don't know if this is my favorite character, but the one that intrigued me the most was Elektra, one of Clytemnestra's daughters. She's a bit more quiet and shy and sort of in her head. But I think there's more to her than meets the eye. And so I would just like to see what she's thinking about. I know there is a book called Elektra, and so I would be interested to read that. I think that it's not just about her. I think it's about Elektra and Clytemnestra and then a third woman, which is a bit annoying. I would like a book just about her and her story. But yeah, I think that's the character that I would like to talk to. Those were all of the questions. I would love to hear your answers to any of them, either in the comments or in a video of your own. If you do make a video, please tag me so that I can watch it. And yeah, I think that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.